Christmas of 42, 43 at school holidays, my mum came up to Martin and brought me home to Paekakariki. As we came down the Paekakariki Straits, my brother said, "Have a look, John, out here." My younger brother, as we rattled through Mackay's on the old Auckland Express, and there we are, both sides of the camp, both sides of the track, camps, then Camp Paekakariki as we came into Paekakariki. Get off the station over here. The first thing I see is these guys in green uniforms, smart-looking green uniforms. Nothing like my dad. He went away in his old khaki army uniform, and they looked really cool. They got on the train and off they went to Wellington. Then they were in the streets, and we just lived down here in Ames Street. I went back to school, and we slowly sort of got used to Marines. I'll just touch on a couple of stories. We had this little gang we used to traipse around the place. One day we were up behind Camp Mackay in the WWII Valley, and the Marines, must have been about lunchtime, the Marines had just finished a tear gas exercise, and the tear gas grenades were still smoking on the ground. So, being brave kids, we picked these up and playfully tossed them at each other. Well, tear gas is terrible stuff. It gets in your clothes, it gets in your skin, it gets in your eyes and you can't see. Well, we're in a pretty poor state there. Well, just to put it mildly, well, in those days, the Paekakariki water supply came from the Ramara stream, which was just alongside us, and there's a little wee dam there. It wouldn't be any bigger than this circle here. So it was August, so we stripped off our clothes and we all jumped in here and washed ourselves with mud, would you believe, to get the stuff off our skin. Anyway, I don't want to do about clothes. That night at home, Paekakariki down in Ames Street, Mum's doing the dishes, and she said, "My word, the water's muddy tonight." But I think the most activity I ever saw in the village was when the landing exercise was on, which Colin referred to. We lived down Ames Street, and my mother, she kept us under close watch on the house that weekend. She didn't want us escaping. And Sunday afternoon, it must have been, we could hear this rumble of machines, and we were up in the air a bit, and we looked down on the beach, and there's these Amtraks coming down, about half a dozen, and they tootled off out to sea, and the lead one threw a couple of cans over the side, and the guys following banged away with the machine guns, and this was all great entertainment for me and my young brother. So that made us more excited. Well, next morning they were still there, and it was a Monday, and we went to school up on the main road, and after school, a friend and I, George, we shot over to the beach, and where the surf club is now, these big rubber boats are leaning up against the sand dune, and from over where the WWII Pa is in the lookout, we could hear the odd rifle shot coming, so we thought we'd have a look. Well, we sort of sneaked, as you talked about the lupins, they were high, we sneaked round to the lupins, and we couldn't see, so we came down the seaward side of the hill, and suddenly found ourselves in a little foxhole with a couple of startled Marines. And they looked at us and we looked at them. If they'd been New Zealand troops, we'd had a smack in the air and told to be on our way, but these guys let us play for a while until my mate, they had a little pile of pumice there, which they were using for hand grenades, and the officers were standing here and there, they had white helmets on and blowing whistles and yelling and screaming. And my mate, he picked up one of these bits of pumice and threw it as a hand grenade. That was enough for our friendly Marines. They said, "Guys, we're starving. We've been here all day. Can you get us some grub?" And they gave us a £5 note. So McKinley's shop, we just talked about a minute ago, was the nearest shop. So we raced down there as quick as we could. There's rationing, so all we get was, we got a loaf of bread and a jar of jam, raspberry jam. And we walked all the way back up and sneaked back to Lupins. And not a soul in sight. So we worked our way down the hill and out on the beach. And the exercise was over, obviously. So up the beach we could see a collection of gear, sort of vehicles and machinery. So we wandered up there, trying to eat a loaf of bread, broken in half each, raspberry jam. Very hard to do. And we got up there, and there's this little landing barge sitting high and dry, and these machines split around it, and guys just standing there smoking. And it was obvious the barge was going nowhere till the tide came in. And that's where Frank Zealot was. Now, I met Frank, and he says, "I'm the guy he gave 10 bob to get him some beer." Well, I'm telling him he's got it all wrong. It wasn't me at all. I said, "We got £5 off the Marines, and we kept the change, so we did better." Anyway, that night we walked home, and that next morning at school, the beach was out of bounds, absolutely out of bounds. And I suppose you've all read Frank's story how they towed their barge out backwards at speed in the surf, and it flipped over, capsized, and he was very, very lucky to survive. And being a lifeguard here for many years, it was an absolutely dopey thing to do, what that officer did. And as Frank said, he ran the inquiry afterwards, so nothing ever said about it. And the funny thing was, Paekakariki sort of folklore held for, I don't know, about the next 50, 60 years. About 107 Marines had drowned that night. And Colin said they were going, they got that wrong because they were going away in ambulances, but they were only injured, they weren't dead. And it was a 10 seamen actually drowned. And it was very sad because come all this way. And it was a pretty happy ship, I gather, the ship they came off, and they lost these 10 guys at Paekakariki.